Hi, Rachel Mead here, founder and president of Enhanced Prep. Thanks for joining me today while we take a look at an SAT reading-based question focusing in on the author's purpose. In particular, we're going to work on identifying the overall structure. Now, in this case, we have a poem. It's not a rhyming one, but it is still a poem, and it's pretty darn old. One of the reasons why the SAT tends to use old text, whether it be poetry or literature, is once we hit the 100-year mark, the copyright expires on it. So then they're able to come through and put this old text in here for us. But it also makes the questions a little bit more challenging because we as readers typically don't read this style very often. And so we have a little bit more analysis that we have to do. So the first thing I want to do is I want to pay attention to what's happening in my answer choices. And I'm going to start with just the first phrase. We have the character question something, a character makes an announcement, a character regrets his decision, and a character receives criticism for his actions. So these things are all pretty darn different in terms of the way that they are established. And without getting distracted by everything in my answer choice, I want to come through and see if this is enough to help me out. All right, so let's come over and let's take a look at our text. And we're going to be reading about the coming of Arthur. Now, if you have proper names in your text, remember that you can technically just bypass them, right? We don't have any proper names in our answer choices, so they really don't matter a whole lot as long as in our head we can keep the people straight. So I tend to just call them by their first initial. For example, I'd say this year when M had his, for example, I'd say this year when M for his hour had come. So I'm just identifying Merlin as M. Granted, that's an easy name to pronounce, but we can see we've got some others in here that aren't quite so much that way. All right, so let's take a look at what he did. He brought Arthur forth and set him in the hall, proclaiming, "Here's your king." And again, we've got other description. I don't want to get too distracted about that. And then we see some reaction. "Away with him," these voices cried out. "He is not our king." And again, you can see I'm paraphrasing here because that's really important that I do that and not get hung up on what's happening in the language. And then I can see what Merlin is coming back to do. Yet Merlin, through his craft, maybe you're familiar with Merlin. You know that he is a magician from this King Arthur or Knights of the Round Table. So you might know that Merlin, from reading you've done before in King Arthur or Knights of the Round Table, is a magician. So through his craft, it's talking about using magic here. If we don't know that, that's just fine. Again, we can figure out enough of what's happening without understanding the full context because we have what we need in the passage right here. "And while the people clamored for a king, had Arthur crowned." So that's telling me that he still had Arthur declared as king. But after the great lords, so these other people that were having an issue with this, banded and went to war. Okay, so now let's take a look at our answer choices. A character questions the desires of the people. Well, I don't see Merlin coming through and questioning the desires of the people, and the other people that it's mentioning here are the ones reacting. They're not questioning anything. A character makes an announcement. Okay, that does hold true for Merlin, so I like that so far. A character regrets his decisions. I don't see that happening with either Merlin or the other people mentioned, so I'm going to get rid of that answer choice as well. A character receives criticism for his answers, for his actions. That makes sense too. We see other people reacting, the people of the kingdom reacting to Merlin's announcement. So now I'm down to both B and D that make sense. So I need to take a look at what else is happening in the rest of my answer choice. An announcement that makes others angry. I can see that holding true. Continues to follow through with his original plan. Well, that makes sense too, because we can see that Merlin had Arthur crowned. Let's take a look at D. Then announces that he will continue with his plan. That can seem like it's almost the exact same answer, but we have this word right here. Do we see anything in here about Merlin announcing that he's still going to work on making Arthur king, or does it just happen? Well, it says, had Arthur crowned. So that's saying it happened. He didn't tell people he was still going to do it. And that's going to make B my better answer. But we have to make sure we're analyzing those answer choices so carefully. Otherwise, that announces that's happening in D could be a big distraction to cause us to fall for a trap answer. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll see you next time.